The FIA said at the start of the year that it will reassess the arrangement of the zones used at the first 5 races of the 2023 Formula 1 season. It did so based on overtaking data collected last year when it implemented new technical restrictions designed by F1 to make it simpler for drivers to follow one another. Thus, the activation positions for the first 2 DRS zones in Miami have been relocated farther up the road. The initial DRS activation point on the straightaway to turn 11 has been moved from 30 meters after turn 9 to 105 meters after the turn, lowering the DRS zone by 75 meters. The second DRS zone on the back straight has also been reduced by 75 meters, beginning 525 meters after turn 16, instead of 450 meters. The last DRS zone into the short start-finish straight, which had no effect on overtaking anyhow, was left alone. The changes were done circuit by circuit and are thus unrelated to the DRS decrease at last weekend's Azerbaijan GP, when the DRS zone on the main straight was trimmed by 100 meters. The reduced zones, though, are certain to raise concerns after a highly processional debut Miami GP last year. On Sunday, the Baku City Circuit delivered a mediocre race in which passing proved practically impossible, and several drivers questioned why the DRS zone was reduced since overtaking in 2023 is expected to be more difficult than the previous year due to the increased downforce teams have added to their cars. After being unable to overtake rivals in Baku, Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton said, "They shortened the DRS this year down the straight. I don't quite know why they did that. We've always had great racing where the DRS was. By the time you switched the DRS on, it was too late. Was there a lot of overtaking today? Well, there you go." When McLaren driver Lando Norris was asked if Baku's shorter DRS zone made sense, the Briton added, "No, none. All the drivers questioned it in the driver's briefing." The Miami International Autodrome, which circles the Hard Rock Stadium of Miami Dolphins, has also been completely repaved for this season. Its original surface received negative feedback from drivers last year and was blamed for the lack of action during the race. In addition, Turn 15's layout has been tweaked somewhat, and the runoff zones at Turn 1, 4, 7 and 11 have been lowered and the barriers realigned. The barriers between Turn 13 and 14 have also been modified. This season, the FIA sought to fine-tune the DRS zones at a number of sites. The Australian Grand Prix saw the reintroduction of 4 DRS zones, but the Azerbaijan Grand Prix had a shorter DRS zone on the main straight, which was likely a role in the lower number of overtakes last week. Some drivers hate the changes. Some don't mind it, as Fernando Alonso is unconcerned by the absence of overtaking in Formula 1, claiming it's simply the nature of the sport. What are your thoughts on the changes regarding the DRS zones? Are they needed to improve the racing, or was it wise to shorten them once again? Let us know in the comments. But overtaking proved tough for the field in the most recent Grand Prix in Azerbaijan, with the exception of Red Bull, as drivers struggled to follow cars ahead. Alonso, who finished 4th for Aston Martin, was only able to make up positions on the race start and safety car restart in Baku, and was unable to pass Charles Leclerc for a 4th straight podium. However, speaking in Miami, the 2-time world champion believes that the lack of overtaking seen in F1 is common, and he cited 2 dominant eras to back up his point. "It's always been like this in F1, Alonso said. For 7 years, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas were 1st and 2nd, and in the past, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. So you have the fastest car. You can start a little bit behind and you may still be making moves and overtakes. And if you're in any other car, wherever you're qualifying, you're more or less securing that position. There are not many overtakes after lap 2 or lap 3, but even here, we could some rain forecast for Sunday. But not seeing many overtakings is the nature of Formula 1, so it should not be a surprise." When pressed further, Alonso proposed a simple explanation for why there was so little overtaking in the field. "Because we are very close in terms of performance," he explained. "If you remove the Red Bulls, sometimes within 6 tenths you are P3 to P16 in Q1 to get into the next session. So eventually you finish qualifying in the order that you deserved, and then in the race, how will you overtake a car that's just half a tenth quicker? Morally, it is the natural order, so I think that is the main reason. And then it could be the tyres as well. They still get overheated if you follow a car, so you need to decide wisely when you want to be too close to the car in front of you. They change every year a little bit this year. We have a new construction, so the front tyres are much more robust than last year, so that is good news. But as I said, overheating is the biggest thing." While the Baku change sparked some debate, Alonso insisted that certain cars were hurt more than others, which is why their drivers expressed their displeasure. Alonso pointed out that the FIA knows from data obtained at last year's races that both courses were among the easiest for passing under DRS, and he supports the decision to reduce the zones. "I think so, yes," the Aston Martin driver answered when asked if he agrees with the FIA's decision to reduce the Miami zones. "It was the easiest here last year, apparently, so that's why I think the FIA did shorten the DRS. In Baku, it was one of the easiest last year, so they shortened the DRS. I heard Lewis Hamilton was saying that the DRS was too short, which I think for them, with the high downforce, it was too short. For Red Bull, it was too long." At the start-finish line, Max Verstappen overtook Charles Leclerc, and he was opening to brake on the outside for turn 1. So if you are one car, it was too long. If you take another car, it was too short. So I guess it was about the calculation that the FIA do after seeing last year's races. Baku and Miami, they were on the high side in terms of overtaking and how easy it was. So that's why they shortened it. Let's see this year, but it's difficult to predict. Alonso said that when teams adapted their car designs to the new aerodynamic rules coming in 2022, it became more difficult to keep up with cars ahead. It's true that this year it seems a little bit more difficult to follow cars. That's 100% correct. Red Bull thinks that the DRS zones are too long, so it depends which car you take. When asked if ground effect was the best option, Alonso stated it was too early in the life of the current rules to make a decision. "It's a good question," he said. "I think there were higher expectations on following cars, and maybe having the grid a little bit closer together. I don't know, I think we need to give a little bit more time. If we didn't have the Red Bull that much ahead, I think it would be a very interesting fight, with 3 or 4 teams within 1 or 2 tenths, and maybe we were saying that the rules, they were a success. So maybe this is the story in a few years' time or whatever, when we have some stability in the rules. Then maybe 2026, everything changes again." But after failing to pass each other at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, some other Formula 1 drivers questioned the decision to limit the DRS zones on the main straight. As overtaking, according to some drivers, has gotten more difficult in the second year since F1's new aerodynamic restrictions were implemented. It certainly didn't make any sense that they made it shorter, because the cars are harder to follow this year with the rule changes, said Kevin Magnussen. Also, just the cars getting more complex, and the involvement in aerodynamics is causing it to be harder to follow. So if anything, it should be the same or even longer. Logan Sargent also feels F1 and the FIA should reconsider shortening DRS zones. "You can't do much," said the Williams driver. "You get stuck behind the cars in front. It's really difficult to overtake and get close enough. I just kind of had to settle in and just race my race. It was a pretty lonely one, unfortunately." For starters, they should extend the DRS zones as they were last year. We've been making them shorter and shorter, 100 meters shorter this year compared to last year in Baku, and just makes it too difficult to make a move at the end of the straight. After 2 highly processional races in Baku, not everyone was persuaded that the modification to the DRS zones was to blame. "I'm not sure that 100 meters more DRS would have made a difference," said Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff. "Maybe just." However, prior to the start of the weekend, his driver George Russell, who's also a director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, expressed concern about the decision to shorten the DRS zone and the lack of consultation. "The overtaking is harder this year than it's been last year," said Russell. "As the cars have evolved away from the initial regulations that F1 introduced, overtaking has become more difficult. Obviously, they're shortening all the DRS zones as well, which the drivers have had zero input on, and been a little disappointed again that we weren't in that loop to hear that, because I'm not sure the FIA are aware that we feel that the overtaking is harder, yet they're basing the DRS off historic information." What are your thoughts? Is F1 pushing it too far? Are they making the races more boring now with all the DRS changes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Even though there are a lot of changes, we can't wait to see what happens at the Miami Grand Prix. Also, let us know who you're backing for the win. Another Red Bull 1-2 coming up? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.